Welcome back, Defenders. Jake here. This video might get a little dark in the middle, but I promise I've got good news at the end. And we're actually going to start with something pretty hilarious. Kremlin media announces Russian troop withdrawal from the Kherson region, then immediately deletes it. One prominent Ukrainian Telegram channel claimed Russian media outlets had been duped by a fake Ministry of Defense account operated from Ukraine. So here's the post on Telegram from TASS Media. This is Russian state media. The news: the commander of the Dnipro group decided to regroup troops to more advantageous positions east of Dnieper is cancelled, as was released erroneously. We apologize to our subscribers and readers. So somebody in Ukraine tricked Russian state media into announcing their military was withdrawing from the Kherson region. No, I don't think this is true, but someday, eventually, it will be true, and Russia will pull out of this region. This region, there's not a whole lot going on. There's no major cities. This is the region that Russia is defending the least, cares the least about, and this is the place where Ukraine is trying to apply the most pressure. Ukrainians step up efforts to cross the Dnipro and tie up Russian forces in the Kherson Oblast. So when we look at the satellite image of this area, there's this national park that's also a giant sand dune, and there aren't any Russians in the sand dune. That doesn't make sense. So between the sand dune and the river, there's a very narrow strip of territory with homes and settlements between the villages of Krinky and Kazachi. This is where Ukraine is trying to develop their bridgehead. They're trying to lodge themselves between these two villages, and then they're going to start fighting west and start fighting east at the same time. The reason why this is advantageous is all of these buildings and settlements run parallel to the side of the river they control. They can launch drones, they can offer support, their artillery is waiting to hit positions once they're identified, and the Ukrainians can fight with the river to the north, the sand dune to the south, back to back, and they only have to worry about one direction. This is still incredibly difficult, very challenging to rotate men and material across the river. So what does it look like? And here's a video of Ukrainians crossing the river.
Все, уходим з лівого берега додому трошки віддихнути. Пацани вигрузились. Це березочка наш драйверок любимий, пацики. Все, пішли, Дніпро. Що, поки лівий берег на недільку. Все, мы пробуем. Я через неделю обратно хуярю. Да, бля, хули там делать надо? Тут весело, тут классно надо. Шиша нахуй перепуганий, блядь.
So you'll notice in this video right now it's incredibly foggy. This is the best time to move across the river as you can't be spotted by Russian surveillance drones. So if it's cloudy or foggy, this is the moment to move men and material across the river safely. Pretty cool. Let's go ahead and check in on the city of Avdiivka, and the city of Avdiivka continues to hold. Russia hasn't made any progress in the last couple days, but they're committed. They're committed probably to sending about 1,000 soldiers a day in these meat wave attacks in the north. Their goal is to get to this road. This is the main supply road that resupplies Avdiivka. They've got to get around the chemical plants north of the city, so I don't know how they are planning to do that, but they might just keep trying to expand through open fields and surround the chemical plants. Either way, the losses, the videos online are horrendous. I've been sharing these videos with you and pinned comments because I can't show the bodies. The thousands and thousands of Russian soldiers laying dead in these minefields, part of failed meat wave attacks. So I'll link this video down below, and I'll link this video down below if you want to see the carnage, the chaos, the bodies. Russian soldiers laying dead in fields, not being retrieved. How can you retrieve them when everything is mined and everything is within artillery range? So here's a very disturbing video from Dmitry at War Translated. It's 3 minutes and 12 seconds long. I'll link it down below. And this is a Russian commander disciplining his troops for drug use. Drug use in the war zone, this is just the reality of war. Soldiers who feel hopeless and depressed, yes, oftentimes come into the military with drug addictions, but these Russian soldiers were doing drugs when they were supposed to be part of an offensive. The offensive failed, and this commander is punishing them. So I'm going to skip the first 40 seconds because I can't show that. But I do want to read a little bit for you. This is the guy holding the camera speaking. I'll send you this video. I punished these people already. I invite you here to punish them for our guys from the first company. It's their fault. They didn't provide support. Effing dig. I hope the guys from the first company see this. Come here if you want, and I'll give them to you. All who didn't return from the last mission, that's due to their fault. So we're punishing them. I can't show the next 2 minutes of this video. It's Russian soldiers being beaten by their leadership. But here are my thoughts when I see these kinds of videos. People who support Russia know about these kinds of videos. They see these videos and couldn't care less. The lives of Russian soldiers have no value to people in the West who choose to support Russia. So this might contribute to why ordinary Russians back in Russia don't want to pay attention to the war. If they actually followed the blogs, if they watched my channel, they'd see these clips of Russian men being brutalized, being sacrificed, being expended and used, because nobody in the Kremlin actually cares about them. So here's Solvoyov reflecting on TV, how ordinary Russians in Moscow and St. Petersburg don't talk about the war, don't think about the war, want nothing to do with it. Have you noticed how society in big cities bashfully tries not to see the war? Of course, someone makes camouflage nets, someone does something every day to help the front, someone collects parcels. Although there's nothing to talk about provisioning at the front now, there is everything. But people try not to notice the war. It's more convenient. And when people come from there, it looks like this. Stop it already. That's enough. Why? That worries us. And you'll have to be concerned, especially when a year and a month ago, there was a partial mobilization, and then there was some movement. And now men go to the front voluntarily, earn good money there, and they feel well. This is the impression that I get watching channels that do street interviews of ordinary Russians in Moscow. The millions of people living in the capital city know if they say the wrong thing, they'll be arrested and sent to jail for 8 or 9 years. So the safest thing to do is to not think about it, not talk about it, not contribute or care about the outcome of Putin's 3-day special military operation. But this doesn't fit Putin's plan. Putin re-election campaign begins enlisting surrogates. So Putin wants a victory. He wants the people to love him, to celebrate him as a conqueror, the Russian leader who brought Ukraine back into the Russian Empire, the man who fixed Boris Yeltsin and Gorbachev's mistakes. So the Kremlin has begun compiling a list of influential figures that would campaign on behalf of Putin next year during his re-election. According to the newspaper, work on organizing a so-called initiative group of campaign surrogates suggests that Putin will likely run as an independent candidate next year, same as he did in 2018. So Russia has a one-party state. The United Russia Party is the only party that has any say. All the other minor parties in the Duma are controlled by the United Russia Party. Putin is the head of the United Russia Party, but one-party rule looks bad. So to get around this, Putin calls himself an independent, calls himself a unifier, but there is no true free elections or political choice in Russia. So Russia's Federation Council may, on December 13th, announce the official date of the presidential elections. More than likely, it'll be March 17th of next year. So this is what Putin wants. By December 13th, he wants the Russian military to take the city of Avdiivka. That way he can give a speech to the nation, announcing his re-election, and then he can have a smooth coronation on March 17th. So here's where we get to the bad news. As an American, I have no explanation. This is shameful in my opinion. Proposed U.S. funding bill excludes Ukraine aid as political battle looms. Nothing that the new Speaker Johnson is saying or doing actually gives me confidence that the United States is going to continue militarily supporting Ukraine for another year. And the Democrats are going to go along with it to avoid a government shutdown. Democrats signal support for Speaker Johnson's plan to avert a government shutdown. So here's the paragraphs we need to read together. What Speaker Johnson and the House Republicans are offering is another continuing resolution based on last year's funding. The reason why the Democrats like this is they wrote the budget last year. So if they can just keep kicking the can down the road with continuing resolutions based on the funding that they wrote last year, Democrats view this as a win. So let me read this. The two-step approach would extend funding for part of the government, including the Agriculture, Transportation, and Veteran Affairs departments, through January 19th, and fund the Department of Defense through February 2nd. So if Speaker Johnson schedules a vote and can get Democrats to support it, we're in the same position come February 2nd. In a letter to colleagues Monday, this is the minority leader in the House, Hakeem Jeffries, said to Congress their central mission is to keep the government funded and are carefully evaluating the proposal set forth by Republican leadership and discussing it with members. It's clear that Johnson will need to rely on Democrats to pass his first major legislation given his razor-thin majority and the mounting GOP defections. So there's about 50 House Republicans that want to shut down the government unless they get absolutely everything they want. So in order to pass this, in order to keep the government open another 2 months, Democrats are going to have to support it. So Jeffrey says it's not perfect, but it's a whole lot better than a shutdown. In addition to delaying a fight over spending cuts until next year, the Johnson CR does not include other politically prickly issues like aid for Israel, Ukraine, or Taiwan, humanitarian aid for Palestinians and others, as well as border security provisions. Those fights will be punted until after Thanksgiving. So it doesn't matter what Speaker Johnson says, I'm watching what he does. And at any moment, he could schedule a vote, an up or down vote. Funding for Ukraine ran out on October 1st, a month and a half ago. If he just scheduled a vote, it'd get over 300 votes in the House. It would easily pass in the Senate. President Biden would sign it. So he's blocking it because there are traitors in Congress like Matt Gaetz and Marjorie Taylor Greene, who would just remove him if he tried to allow a vote for military aid to Ukraine. I could be wrong. This could abruptly change. I'm hoping that somebody from the Pentagon, or maybe, like the Prime Minister of Great Britain or the President of France, calls him and says, we need you. We need you to do the right thing. History will not judge you kindly if you don't support democracy around the world. And authoritarians are on the march. We now have a grand military alliance between Iran, North Korea, and Russia. These are dictators who can say, for as long as it takes, because they're the only ones who get to make decisions. The people of these countries have no say. They have to do what their dictator dictates. And Iran and North Korea are committed to helping Russia destroy Ukraine. So this is where the video gets dark, and I have to be careful what I say. In my last video, I mentioned that if the United States stops supporting Ukraine, then Ukraine, the gloves come off, and they could start using kamikaze drones or saboteurs to destroy Russia's pipeline infrastructure. Pipes going to China, oil tankers going to India, pipes going to other European countries in the Black Sea or going through Turkey. If Ukraine is facing annihilation, if they know they can't conventionally win a war without the help of the United States, then they're going to get desperate. If they're going to lose anyways, they might as well try everything possible in order to stop, deter, or defeat Russia. Which leads to the question of nuclear weapons. If the United States abandons its support for Ukraine, what incentive does Ukraine have for not developing nuclear weapons of their own? The reason why they're not blowing up pipelines is that would disrupt global energy. If gas prices in the United States doubled, Ukraine would lose America's support. But if America gets bored and just gives up anyways, then why wouldn't Ukraine develop nuclear weapons to try and turn this war in a different direction? Ukraine has all the fissile materials they need from their remaining 3 nuclear reactors. You can see from this map, this was early in the war. Russia was trying to get to this nuclear power plant as fast as possible because Russia knows what Ukraine is capable of. Ukraine used to have nuclear weapons. There are old Soviet scientists who are Ukrainian, probably still alive, that could help President Zelensky and his government get there pretty fast. Am I saying Ukraine today has a nuclear program? No, there's no evidence for that, and I think President Zelensky wouldn't want to risk it. But if the United States abandons Ukraine anyways, and this war painfully drags on another 6 months, another year, another 2 years, that is plenty of time for Ukraine to start enriching uranium and plutonium from their civilian reactors in order to make a low-yield nuclear weapon. It's not that hard. You can get the plans on Wikipedia. So does Ukraine have this right? And when we reflect on the Budapest Memorandum, Ukraine gave up their nuclear weapons for 2 promises. One, that Russia would never attack them and respect their sovereignty. And 2, if Russia attacked them, the UK and the United States would come to their defense. These are the conditions that Ukraine signed the Non-Proliferation Treaty of Nuclear Weapons. So in my opinion, legally and morally, Ukraine has every right to pursue nuclear weapons that they would use in their defense. They could use them on Russian troop positions in the occupied territories. Every nuclear power, Russia, North Korea, India, the United States, says that they can use nuclear weapons in self-defense. So it doesn't matter how you describe the scenario, Ukraine looks justified. So idiots like Elon Musk say that we need to stop supporting Ukraine to prevent nuclear war, to prevent World War III, because Russia would never tolerate losing. He's an idiot because he's not considering what would happen if Ukraine faced annihilation. Elon Musk's final position on Ukraine is that it's better for Ukrainians to surrender, to submit and live as slaves in Putin's Russia, rather than to continue fighting for their freedom and independence. Ukraine's never going to do this. Given all of the war crimes and atrocities that have happened to their people, given how many soldiers they've already lost fighting this war, they're going to keep going, even if the West abandons them. And this is the scenario that could trigger World War III. If Ukraine says, we got to do something to change the game, and they detonate a low-yield nuke somewhere in the occupied territories to fight the Russian forces, and then Russia responds with a nuclear weapon, takes out Odessa, Kyiv, Kharkiv, well then, doesn't NATO have to get involved? Isn't that the red line? If NATO gets involved, isn't that World War III? So there's lots of wargaming scenarios that are all nightmares. If the West, if the United States gives up their support for Ukraine. So I think this is the narrative that people need to adopt, that we need to be telling our leaders, no, we need to continue supplying and supporting Ukraine. Otherwise, if things get worse, the conflict will expand, the genie's out of the bottle, people are using nuclear weapons for convenience in their wars of aggression, trying to take over their neighbor's territory. So that's dark. I hope I was clear. If you guys have any questions, maybe let me know down below. These are my thoughts, given my personal experience with nuclear weapons. Oh, this is not a good headline. The EU will not be able to supply Ukraine with 1 million shells by the end of the year. This promise was made in 2022 that the European Union would supply Ukraine with 1 million shells by the end of 2023. Reports are they've only delivered about 300,000. Just imagine if Ukraine had had another 700,000 artillery shells to fire on the Russians this year. Why the delay? Why the inability to increase production? I can't speak for the EU. Now on for the good news. I promised you guys there was good news. Berlin steps up. Uncle Sam is still Ukraine's biggest supporter, but Germany is closing in. If next week Germany's ruling coalition approves what the defense minister has promised, Berlin will, by some measures, outpace the US as Ukraine's most valuable and solid supporter. So when you factor in tax revenue that goes to EU funds supporting Ukraine, in addition to unilateral aid coming directly from Germany, Germany's doing a lot. Germany's been incredible this year, so thank you so much. Germany to provide Ukraine with 2 more Iris-T air defense systems. Ukraine's going to need these this winter. Yesterday marked the 100th ship to depart through the Black Sea Humanitarian Corridor, an export lifeline for Ukraine that has delivered 3.7 million tons of food and goods to the world. So here's the old path that Ukraine was taking when Russia was still participating in the Black Sea grain deal. Russia ended that because they wanted to destroy the port infrastructure in Odessa. Ukraine successfully has fought off these attacks. They cleared some mines, I'm sure, and now the ships hug the coastline going through Turkish waters, Bulgaria, and Romania. So as long as Ukraine can provide some air defenses for their coastline along Odessa, civilian ships are choosing to still go into Ukrainian ports to collect grain in order to take it to the Middle East, North Africa, India, Southeast Asia. So Ukraine is getting their grain exports out, thankfully. This is a tremendous source of revenue, and it's preventing global hunger. So no thanks to Russia. Training center for Ukrainian F-16 pilots opens in Romania. There are several countries all providing F-16 training to Ukrainian pilots. They're moving at different speeds, different paces, so when these pilots graduate, they'll trickle back into Ukraine at different time periods. But in Romania, the planes, I believe, came from the Netherlands, and Ukrainians are now flying these jets. They're going to need a couple more months worth of training and practice, but eventually these planes and these pilots will return to the battlefield in Ukraine. The United States bought 60 Gepard self-propelled anti-aircraft systems from Jordan and then gave them to Ukraine. These Gepard guns are not good at shooting down missiles, but they're amazing at shooting down these cheap Iranian Shahed drones. So as long as Ukraine can get more of these, and the Gepards can take care of the drones, they can save their good stuff, like the Patriot missiles for Russia's best long-range missiles. This is this year's contestant for Ukraine in the Miss Universe contest. Her name is Angelina Yusinova. This is her costume if you just want to see what it looks like. Her theme is Mother Protector. And there's actually a music video put out by her on her channel. She's only got 47 subscribers, so I'll put the video down below if you want to check the video out and show her some support. Final clip I have for you is a Ukrainian woman. I believe her name is Ruzia, and she lost her leg in a Russian attack. Her dream was to visit Paris and see the Eiffel Tower, and she was finally able to do so. That's all for this update video. Glory to Ukraine, glory to the heroes. If you found this video informative, give me a thumbs up. Best way to support the channel. Comments and questions, let me know down below. I love hearing from you guys. Till the next video, keep defending the truth, keep defending democracy.